Hi, everyone. I'm Dmae Roberts, Executive Producer of MediaRites. We come to you from Portland, Oregon, which has the 9th largest urban Native American and Indigenous population in the country, with 380,000 nations represented in Oregon. Portland is located in Multnomah County on the traditional village sites and ancestral homes of the Multnomah, Wasco, Clackamas, Clackamas, Cowlitz, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. We'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, environmental racism, relocation, and assimilation that still impacts tribal families today. MediaRites thanks the Vanport Mosaic Festival for giving us a platform to debut our 6-ism project film. The ISM project addresses the intersections of race, gender, orientation, and national origin. This latest film is Ofelio, written by Andrew Siañez-De, and it's the latest film, Ofelio, which was adapted from his full-length play, Borderline. With this film, we hope to inspire much-needed conversations in living rooms, workplaces, and classrooms. We debuted 3 other films in March, and you can still watch them and the discussions we had on MediaRites' Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can also find Ofelio and this talk today. And now I'd like to introduce our panel of artists and community leaders. Andrew Siañez-De is a Boston-based Mexican-American playwright and audio drama writer from the U.S. borderlands. He is currently a Huntington Theater playwriting fellow, and his work, which often centers his borderland heritage and cultural diaspora, has been developed across the country. He is also a member of the WGA Audio Alliance, working towards an equitable future for audio drama writers. He's also a published fiction writer and was the 2019 Gish Gen Fellow with the Writers' Room of Boston. Hey, Andrew.
Hi, it's wonderful to be here.
It's good to have you. And with us is Francisco Garcia, who directed Andrew's Borderline play that had a stage reading at Milagro Theater. His recent directing credits include 545 for Portland Playhouse's Wonderland Festival of New Works, the world premieres of Emilio Rodriguez's Swimming While Drowning, and Olga Sanchez's Broken Promises for Milagro, and Joan Cushing's Diary of a Worm, a Spider, and a Fly, and Jose Cruz Gonzalez's Tomas and the Library Lady for Oregon Children's Theater, and Naomi Zuka's Anonymous for Lewis and Clark College, where he also worked as an adjunct professor. Francisco is also a board member for MediaRites and also our partner organization, Theater Diaspora. Hey, Francisco.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here today.
It's just great to have you here. And there are 2 actors, 3 actually, who made filming of this project possible as our on-site associate producers. Phillip Ray Guevara, who performs Ofelio, is a professional actor from San Antonio, Texas. He received his MFA in acting from the University of Washington and a BFA in acting from Texas State University. Hey, Phillip.
Hi, everybody.
And also with him is Tricia Castaneda-Guevara, who is a recent graduate of the MFA acting program at the University of Washington and previously received her BA from Linfield College. And Tricia filmed Phillip and their lovely daughter, Isa, who's with us now, and turned their home into a set for this film. And so we're so grateful, Tricia and Phillip, for your dedication and the work that you did. Hey, Tricia and Isa.
Hi, thank you so much. It was an honor to be a part of this.
And speaking of honors, we're also honored to have Jhoana Monroy Espinoza, who is an immigrant solidarity advocate and social worker and promotoras with Adelante Mujeres. She arrived undocumented at the age of 5 in 1997 to reunify with her family. Jhoana is a mother, student, dreamer, and activist. She was denied the citizenship process through her spouse and currently lives in limbo. Jhoana works for policy to support tuition equity, a child care center at Portland Community College, driver's licenses for all Oregonians, affordable housing and access to mental health. She also helped fundraise capital to cover educational scholarships available for dreamers. Later, leading the Dreamers Resource Center, and she currently serves as a board member for Washington County Ignite, a political group that supports BIPOC political leaders, and she's finishing her master's degree in social work. Jhoana, so much. It's so good to meet you and to have you here.
Yes, thank you. Likewise.
So we're going to be in a conversation after the viewing of our short film, Ofelio, which is about 14 minutes. Please stay with us for the panel right after. And now the film adaptation of Ofelio, written by Andrew Siañez-De, with a performance by Phillip Ray Guevara and music by Gerardo Calderon, and directed by Francisco Garcia. And now, Ofelio.
My mom used to tell me that her bones ached when a storm was brewing. I know that feeling now. That ache, that warning. Maybe it comes with age, or maybe it comes with being a parent. Look outside at the wilds of this world and I wonder, what will we leave you? Is there anything left to give except aches and stories? Tengo tantos cuentos que compartir contigo. God, I have so many stories to share with you. I think we should talk about family. About what that word means. Familia. The forgotten lands. Atzlan. Next time you're playing in the sand, grab a handful and let it slip between your fingers. The grains. Can you count them all as they fall? Give them names. Names like Andres, Magdalena, Jaime, Matias, Lourdes. Can you keep up? Santiago, Sebastian, Mateo, Agustina, Diego, Adelita. It's hard, no? Antonio, Veronica, Enzo, Rosita, y yo, y tú. Di tu nombre. Say your name. Add it to the pile of grains gathering at your feet. That's Atzlan. Una tierra de nombres olvidados. Land of forgotten names. Broken promises. Lost families. Bienvenido. Welcome home. It's hard to be without them. Your family. When they were young, my mother was a dancer. My father was a musician. They used to like to tell this story about the night they met. It was a cantina in Juarez, or a dive bar in San Antonio, or a party in Las Cruces. My mother, caught in a trance by my father's music, danced all night long until the stars gave way to the morning sun. No one left but my father and his warm embrace to whisk her away into the new day. Beautiful story, but that's all it was. A story. Really, they met in an alleyway behind an office building. Your grandmother was taking out the garbage, and there was your grandfather, drunk, singing a corrido into an empty bottle. In the end, she said that all that really mattered was his smile and the sun of a new day. What more do you need to start a new life? They weren't ashamed of what they had to do to make a life for themselves, but they told that story to anyone who asked. Guess we all have stories like that. But these lies, they add up, don't they? They grow, they fester, they latch onto each other until they can stand on their own and walk and leave you, the real you, behind. You don't even know when it's too late until you're looking in the mirror. I have a confession to make, mija. A story. No. A truth to tell. He vivido aquí toda mi vida, en El Paso. I've lived here all my life in El Paso. Between both worlds, on the border. I've driven up and down this border, this scar, for decades, longer than I can remember. I never really wanted to be far away from it, so I joined them. The Border Patrol. I scoured the earth looking for you. Mi familia. I hunted you, bagged you and tagged you, poured out gallons of water into the parched earth, separated mothers from their children, destroyed families. And I lied to myself. I told myself that I was fighting to protect the country that my parents worked themselves to death just to be a part of. Felt it was my duty, no? No. Our parents, our ancestors, nuestros padres, nuestros antepasados, they didn't bring us here. We've been here all along. Somebody took our river, our pulse, and made it a wound, but not anymore. Never again. Tonight, I will tell you a great truth. about all those that came before you and those that are still to come, the grains that have yet to fall. I know no amount of apologizing can make up for what I've done. So I went back for them, back to those cages, back to that world of lost souls, and I asked them for their stories. They hid the letters in chain links or nestled them into my palm, hid them in bottles or cans and tossed them over the fence. I went back in the dead of night and collected them, sent them to their loved ones, but not all of them made it. Some of the letters, they came back because there was no one left on the other side to receive them. No one left to read their words, cherish their memory, ache for their return. I've been too afraid to read them. Too frightened to face their shaky handwriting. The spots where teardrops twisted the ink into wisps of smoke. But I look at you, and I see the world my parents fought for. It wasn't a place or a country. It was those eyes. Those little eyes that stare back with wonder, curiosity, hope. Hope wrote those letters. And it's time we open them. Even if only to remember their words. From a father I sent back to Oaxaca. Mis hijos, I miss you with all my heart. It hurts me to know that I can't be there to protect you. I hear what's happening, what the world is turning into, and I can't help but feel that I have failed you. ¿Qué tipo de padre soy si no puedo proteger a mis hijos? What kind of father am I if I cannot protect my children? But I know you are strong. You have your mother's fire, your grandfather's bravery. I'm working as hard as I can to bring myself back to you. But until then, please stay safe. I love you. I love you. I love you. I can't say it enough. I love you. I will see you again.
I'm Dmae Roberts, executive producer of MediaRites, back with the panel for Ofelio. And MediaRites adapted and transformed the monologues of the ISM project into short, safely produced films. And Ofelio was filmed at the Onsite associate producer's home with a production team involved virtually. We also want to thank Oregon Humanities for providing support for this talk today, and to MediaRites Associate Producer Samson Siaroth for recording and editing this panel talk today. On our panel are Andrew Siañez-De and Francisco Garcia, Phillip Ray Guevara, Tricia Castaneda-Guevara, Jhoana Monroy Espinoza, representing the Immigrant Solidarity Project at Adelante Mujeres. So we're going to start with Andrew. And Andrew, I met you when Francisco directed your full-length play Borderline, and I was drawn to the character of the border guard and asked if you'd create the monologue which became the basis for this film. Would you talk about the original play and the story behind the character of Ofelio?
Hi, yes. Yes. So it was a wonderful opportunity coming up to Oregon to work with Milagro, and of course to work with Francisco on a reading of Borderline. Borderline as a play, I've always pitched it as a ghost story. You know, we're all sort of told stories about what goes bump in the night, but for, you know, young children on the border, those stories have a different meaning to them, or they can have a different meaning. So I wanted to approach this really as a play about a horror story about the chupacabra, but the chupacabra in the play is a Border Patrol agent. The story itself, the play itself, centered around two different generations of young kids. You have Rosa and Enzo, who are young children, early teens, and then Tony and Veronica, who are late teens in the play. And Ofelio is a character who we really just see over the radio. He's both the villain and the narrator of the play. And he plays such an interesting role because he's sort of my critique of Latinx people in the Border Patrol. I've had family in that department, and I really wanted to tell a story and really examine a character who later in life sort of really feels that guilt or really experiences that guilt. And over the course of the play, his actions are sort of his efforts to make up for what he's done. So this was an interesting opportunity to sort of remove that character from that narrative, but still sort of have that conversation. So it really started at first as, let's take all of his monologues, let's make a large piece. What does that look like? But of course, without the context of the children and the horror story, we weren't really capturing what that narrative was when you're seeing the whole, 90-minute play. So we then approached this as, let's just take a deeper look. Let's expand on some of the stories he's telling, especially that about his parents, and just seeing the ways he sort of came about to realizing his guilt and what he wants to do. So I think this was just a wonderful opportunity. It's not every day someone says, hey, not only did I love your play, but can we do something with this character? I don't often get to revisit individual characters in these plays, so it was such a great opportunity to bring Ofelio into a stronger light, let's say. Yeah,
that's great. It must be really hard to see this part of the play, of the full-length play. I mean, what is it like with the film and your response to that, and seeing this character more developed in this way?
I will say, I think you definitely got some of the best parts of the play and put it in this. So it's interesting because I think Ofelio he's a difficult character. I'll say that. I think it's really important. I should also add that the majority of my plays and the majority of my work take place in the El Paso area. All of my work happens along the borderlands. And I think only in two pieces do I really talk about sort of immigration policy and the Border Patrol. So I think what I really do want to make clear is that I don't feel a lot of sympathy for the Ofelio character, I should say. I think he's really based on some people in my life who maybe haven't come to terms with sort of their own impacts or their own sort of actions. And I think I've sort of created a character that says like, hey, let's hope you have this conversation one day. So it's interesting to have, this character who is sort of, a character examination that happens over 90 minutes take place instead over a 40-minute piece, complete narration. It's interesting and it's difficult, and I'm just excited to see what people think about it, just because I think he's a character that doesn't often get spoken about or talked about. And in some ways, I think that's good, because I don't think our focus necessarily should be on characters like Ofelio, but I do think it's a narrative that nevertheless is important to have seen.
Would you talk about how the borderland heritage affects you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think at first, especially when I was younger, let's say right before I went to college, I wouldn't have considered too much about it. You're sort of steeped in, I feel I was very steeped in Mexican culture in ways that I really didn't understand until I left El Paso, until I came to Boston to pursue my degree. It wasn't until then that I really saw, everyone sort of prepares you like, hey, when you leave, culture shock and, you got to get ready. People are going to treat you different. And to a degree, I was like, I know. I've seen movies. I've seen, John Hughes films. I know what life is like out there. But then you don't really know the ways it's really going to impact you and, the sort of microaggressions and I'll also add that I went to an acting program here in the Northeast, and just the small ways where even in classrooms, I wasn't being treated the same way or wasn't afforded the same opportunities based solely on my background, or even simple things like teachers not willing to do the work to find work that spoke to me, even though I'm in a program that should be, focusing on my skills as an actor. Yeah, and I think, going into college and sort of realizing that firsthand, and especially I was an acting major, BFA acting major for the majority of my college career, and it got to the point where I just realized I wasn't receiving the training that I wanted to be receiving, specifically because I wasn't being given work that reflected who I was and what my background was. So I did that thing where you pivot and you start writing roles for yourself, and I started writing and student producing my own work to sort of feature, hey, this is my heritage. This is where I come from. And once I started seeing people, react positively to that, that was when I was like, okay, cool. This is something that people are interested about. This is something that I want to pursue. And since then, I think a little less about what people are interested in and more about what is the story that I want to tell? What are the parts of my culture and my heritage that I want to share? And I think because of that, a lot of my work centers young children of color. So I think that's really what I try to give voice to the most, because I think it's very easy to sort of brush over younger voices. I write for a few podcasts, namely Time Storm, which features 2 young twins. And I think it's just so important to tell stories from that point of view, because I think more often than not, they're talked about, but not necessarily showcased or focused on. So for instance, in the original Borderline, the main characters are 4 young children sort of stuck out in the desert. But Ofelio sort of acts as a beacon and a sort of cautionary tale in the same way that horror stories or children's bedtime stories can act as.
Well, thank you for that. I'd like to open it up to Francisco, Phillip, and Tricia to talk about the filming process. But Francisco, what was it like? You had directed the stage reading of the full-length play. What was it like to sort of focus in on this one particular character?
Well, I think this process was it was so different from what I've done before, because I had this original material that I was drawing from when I worked with Andrew when he came here and workshopped the original production, and then we were going to do Ofelio was originally going to be done on the stage. Before we had talked about doing that on the stage, before we were dealing with COVID. And we looked at that, what was that going to look like on the stage? And then when we decided to do it for film, I remember you and I having this talk, Dmae, where we were like, do we want to just film it as if it were still on the stage, or do we actually want to try to make a film out of it? And so when we went to the film route, that really kind of, it changed the script, but it also opened up a lot of opportunities, but also opened up like a lot of questions about how are we going to do this? Because we're going to try to do this as safely as possible, and what is this going to look like? And I feel extremely fortunate that that we were able to cast Phillip and then work with Tricia. And it just kind of like was one of those best case scenarios where when we decide we're going to try to film this during COVID as safely as possible from their home, and I'm going to be Skyping in or Zooming in to watch online, and they're going to have to try to deal with all the lighting and all the sound. And it really was a lot. But like I said, basic case scenario where we had Phillip, who's just an excellent actor, and then we had Tricia, and then of course we had the baby. So everything kind of came together for this piece. But but yeah, it's not too often that I kind of get to visit plays multiple times in different incarnations and kind of watch them grow and take different shape and revisit a character in a different way.
I actually want to ask Samson to put up this screenshot that I took of one of the rehearsal recordings. Can you put that up, Samson? So this is the view that we had
Wow.
to work with.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're viewing as a creative team, through the screen, through the iPad to the camera. So I don't think any of us had really worked like that before. So I wanted to, talk to Phillip and Tricia, because you turned your whole home and added a second character to Andrew's play. What was this whole experience like? I second Francisco saying that we were very lucky to have you both and your entire family in your home. But would you describe what it was like to just turn everything inside out in your living room?
Yeah, so we did scouting beforehand. We send you all a bunch of pictures and videos of the house, which is not easy to do with a newborn child because nothing's neat, nothing's clean, everything is a mess. And so it was decided that upstairs was the best way to do this, so we moved the crib up, and we actually still have it up because it kind of just works. But we moved the crib upstairs into the living room because we just all kind of agreed that this had the most opportunity for different sorts of lighting. And then, Tricia was kind of a genius how she figured it out. We had to use the iPad to, connect it to the camera to see what we were filming, but there wasn't a way to just directly stream that to other people. So Tricia, set up the tablet and then the laptop that we were zooming on, and then we put something over that, and then draped a blanket over that to create like a dark room. But then you had to angle the tablet just right, or else you're just catching reflection of the zoomers. And so hats off to her for figuring that out. I was, juggling as much as I could to help her out and then still try to focus on the story. But yeah, that was all her.
And Tricia, you also had to jump out from under the blanket to help with, baby Isa when she was having, because we didn't have a stunt double, right?
Yeah, all to say that it was wild, and we were wearing many hats, but everybody on the other side of the screen in Zoom, they were so patient, so kind. We have experience doing like Zoom shows from home and reading, but nothing like this. So it was wild. It was wild. It was exciting. It was fun. And like I said, it felt like, even though we were all learning as we were going, it was just kind of meant to be. It created this wonderful piece. So it's so exciting to see it come to life.
Two things. One, we have a wonderful mother-in-law, my mother-in-law, her mother, watched the baby and mostly kept her quiet when times where we didn't need the baby on camera. And so huge, thank you to her. And then also, it wasn't easy, but the crew that we had, Sumi and Clark and
Yes.
Francisco and Dmae and Samson and everybody involved just being so gracious and patient
Yes.
and understanding and oh my God, who am I forgetting?
And Amanda too.
Amanda, oh my gosh, Amanda,
she was awesome.
Amanda, you organized and orchestrated everything. You were incredible, and thank you. Just seriously, we had just a great team involved, and they made it fun, and I'm proud of what we got done.
Well, thank you for that. For everything that you did. And I did want to mention Teresa too, because she was essential in this production too. So your mom and your mom-in-law. I also, before we start talking with Jhoana, I'm wondering, Phillip, did you grow up in Texas?
I did. I'm from San Antonio originally, which is more central Texas. So while I do have experience living in the Southwest, my experience living on the border, I don't think was as profound as listening to Andrew talk about. But there was certainly a part of that culture that I could tap into.
Yeah, because I was wondering about, if the border experience, if you related to that, just being so close.
I honestly, I had to check my privilege a little bit because this story was not as close to me as obviously the playwright. Like, hello, this is your story. But I had to do a lot of research to kind of find that character, and realizing that I am a Latino man who doesn't really speak Spanish and was raised intentionally not to speak Spanish, so that I could fit into the predominantly white culture. Um, there were ways into the story that were based in privilege that helped with this character, but also, it was a little bit embarrassing as a Latino man to come to this script and realize just how privileged I was, and which side of it I was coming from. But it was still a really wonderful journey and a worthwhile endeavor, and I hope that I brought some truth to that, enough to make people think, and maybe sympathize with this character, but also realize what it is in themselves that is reflected in this character and this character's story.
Francisco, did you want to sort of expand on that connection at all?
I mean, this story for me, I'm kind of similar to Andrew in that I work a lot in theater for young audiences, as a director and writer. And the type of work that I am really attracted to and that I really enjoy is work that gives voices to underserved groups. And Andrew, I completely agree with what Andrew was saying in terms of, like, oftentimes, children are kind of the backstory to what we do. And then, I think when in the first reincarnation of this play, when it was Borderline, that was what drew me to it. And then in terms of, like, the new incarnation of Ofelio, what drew it to me as well were my Texas roots. Both my parents are from Texas. I'm like the first person in my family to be born outside of Texas, and they're from Corpus Christi. And also my family's indigenous roots as well, and looking at identity and what that means. And so that was, for me, something that really kind of attracted me to the piece. And just thinking about that, one of the things that Andrew said that resonated with me was the idea of, Ofelio, he's not perfect, and he has, like, these qualities that that's hard to sympathize with. But there is also a part of him that, at least for me, I could see in my family members, because I have family members, a lot of them that are in law enforcement, and seeing why sometimes they make the choices that they do. And I think that's one thing that Phillip did an excellent job with, was, as awful as some of these people are, they're doing what they do for a reason, whether it's for themselves, whether it's for their family. Everyone's got a story to tell, and we may not agree with it, but this is just kind of one perspective of it.
Thank you for that. Speaking of family, your daughter is in this film, as is Tricia's nephews, and some other folks that have worked with MediaRites in the past too.
Yeah, we really.
So I don't want to mention there. It is a pretty big cast, actually.
Yeah, that was one of the things. Also, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dmae, because that was one of the things I was thinking about as well. Is just to take, like, a second to talk about all the children that were involved in this. My daughter was one of the children in this. And then we had some of Tricia's, who was it, Tricia, that was involved in this? Was it?
Both of my nephews, Mateo Gonzales and Elias Gonzales.
Yeah, so we had both of Tricia's nephews involved in this. And then we also had Lulu and
Mila.
And Mila, who were involved in this as well, who I directed both of them in a play/film that I did just right before this. So it's really kind of like we were able to pull all these people that have like worked with MediaRites or have some kind of connection to this piece together to work on this. And that's actually, I think, it's such a powerful moment in the piece when we start seeing all these children's faces, because, we're connecting these names to faces that we're hearing. So
Yeah, that was brilliant. Your idea to have them sort of out in the, sky like that was very eerie and haunting and moving at the same time. I also want to mention that Yasmin Ruvalcaba, who is a writer that we also have worked with and do continue to work with, her brother is in this, as is John. I think Eleanor Gil Kashiwabara, who is also her brother's children are also in this too. So there's a lot of connections with all the kids here, which I think is beautiful. I'd like to bring Jhoana into this. I honestly, we've been talking a lot about the film, Jhoana. I would love to get your response to this, to the film and what you're hearing.
Yeah, I think I am getting just different perspectives, which is awesome. And then also I feel in some way for the agent, but for the children as well. I hardly get to see the concept of, okay, the person who's causing harm. And I could definitely relate, because I used to think that ICE was a boogeyman. I mean, thinking about this perception of, yeah, it's a real threat. And so for me, there's just different concepts that are coming up, such as like mental illness. And I think about the trauma that is inflicted within the communities, but also the trauma that the agent is having to face with. He's coming into reality, and in some way he's trying to liberate from the harm that he's caused, which that's where I think my sympathy comes in, because I think in some way maybe we've been oppressors. And so that goes into hand in hand of like, okay, this is how a system can work. And I also think about the ache of assimilation as well, just because I arrived as a child at the age of 5 years old. And I think about how assimilation can haunt and can lead us with lots of wounds. It could be because we aren't giving the language that our parents are speaking. It could be because our teachers even state, okay, like you shouldn't be smarter, or you're just going to get into high school or not, or even just drop out. And I think about this concept about us trying to better ourselves. Either we survive or we assimilate. And in that aspect, I just feel for the characters, all of them, which is interesting, because I think as a social worker, that's what we're trained to do. We're trained to basically see all the systems, macro, micro, and individual level as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think about the trauma that you also experienced. How have you dealt with that as a child, coming here and being treated the way you were?
Yeah, I think my trauma still haunts me, I think, till this day. I could tell you about how I've coped with it. I think in some way I have liberated. I have said that I'm undocumented, I'm unafraid. And so this concept of liberation is really intriguing as well, because either you face your trauma and you say, okay, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to better myself. And although my trauma has been there, I think I've dealt with it. And I've dealt with it with the help of my parents, the help of the community. I can tell you that I have a few ACEs, which is adverse childhood traumas. And so because of this, I have learned that I have buffered them out because of my community, because my parents put me in different programs and they tried to support me mentally in that aspect. But there was a time where, yeah, depression hit me and I was just a teenager. So thinking about how certain micro and macroaggressions affect you, yeah, it can definitely affect you. And they can either, push you to your extreme where you definitely just assimilate and you don't want to be in your own skin, or you embrace it and then you either put it like a puzzle together, and state that both identities are in you in some way.
Yeah, that's a great image of a puzzle, putting it all together like that. Yeah. You're a promotores with the Immigrant Solidarity Project. That's correct. A program of Adelante Mujeres. Is that correct? You want to talk about, are there specific programs that deal with trauma there in the organization?
Yes. So within the Promotores Project, there's just different agencies that come together. And this is why it was built. It was built because there was a lack and a necessity for immigrants support in some way. We've heard about the raids, we've heard about family separation, but it wasn't until about 3-4 years ago that Adelante Mujeres decided to form this project. And it's based in Washington County. And there's different programs and agencies such as Centro, Bienestar, Dreamers Research Center, Virginia Garcia, and many more now. And so, yes, we are trained to some way support immigrants. And it's through a holistic lens. So it's through policy, mental health, and then also just the systems of what to do and respond when someone is detained. So we are there to take action, support one another, and then also connect individuals to what they need, because there's just different needs at all levels.
What are some of the priorities, I guess, for you and your experience, and also, being a dreamer right now?
So my priority is to actually get my licensure in mental health. So as a social worker, we can get this extended licensure for mental health and help individuals more with therapy. For me, mental health is one of, I think, the biggest key issues, especially right now with COVID. I think everyone is experiencing trauma, or they're actually dealing with their trauma that has been in their backs, or in their histories, as you would say. So for me, dealing and helping folks with trauma, that is, I guess, where I would like to support more, and empower folks, just because I think, like folks stated, it's either we assimilate, and for me, that's just causing harm to yourself, and you're not being true to yourself.
Thank you. I guess on a personal level, for me, and we as artists can create this kind of a film, right? Mm-hmm. But we also don't want to open wounds and cause more trauma. So how is this film helpful, or what's the best use for us for this film?
Yes, I think this film is definitely helpful. In some way, I think individuals and society tells us not to be vulnerable, not to speak about the taboos and the isms. And so this aspect of just pushing it away and just putting it under the pillow doesn't help at all. We actually have to talk about what is happening. Why are there immigrants trying to flee their country? And why is it that the U.S. is getting, a lot of immigrants and refugees? And we have to be critical, because I think it all interconnects in some way. And I've studied immigration, I've studied history, and I could tell you that sometimes we're causing this harm, whether we like it or not. And it's tough and uncomfortable conversations. It's calling out your privilege, which can be, detrimental. It could be in some way causing like this identity crisis, because then you have to really look into what traits and maybe like the shadow work that you have to do. So I am very honored to be here and have watched this film. I think it should definitely be watched. I also think about the concept of, this critical race theory, teaching it to young folks, and ethnic studies, because one-sided story, it is very harmful. So we have to talk about, okay, what's the other side of the story? And bring it in and deconstruct it and try to say, okay, this is what we can do better. There is a saying and there is a statement that I really like, which is, "You are my other me." And it's a beautiful poem. Hopefully, maybe you can incorporate it in here. But it's a poem, and it's basically stating how you can do harm to others. It's like a boomerang. You could do harm, you could do good, but it comes back one way or the other. And I definitely believe in this. And I see this as immigration too. Everything that we've done within like the US or like Americans, it's coming back to us.
Thank you, Jhoana. Thank you for that. I just want to say that if anybody, that you know of in the organization or other organizations wants this film and would like to have a speaker, please, we want to open that up and we can make that work. Okay. So I want this to continue. And I just hope that it can be used as some kind of healing tool. I really do. I would like to open it up. Jhoana, I'm going to ask everybody for their final thoughts. Let's start with Jhoana.
I really enjoyed the film. You all did an amazing job. Having a context regarding the children at the end, that was powerful, because I wasn't really understanding where the children were or how did they come from. Were they just part of the system that it failed because of deportations? I wasn't really aware of the aspect of, forgotten children or individuals who have to try to cross over the border and haven't been successful and have died. So thank you for bringing just a holistic lens into this film. And yeah, I'm thankful for all the actors and the writers. It's phenomenal.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Final thoughts?
Hi, I do just want to take a moment to thank everyone again, just from the bottom of my heart. It's just such an honor and a privilege to be able to do this sort of work and to have people respond to my writing, and just it's an honor, really. I can't get enough of it. So thank you all.
Hi. Yes, it has been a real honor being able to tell the story that Andrew created and work with this amazing team. And one of the things that I think COVID has been a very difficult time for artists. And it's kind of very, a lot of artists have really been affected by it. A lot of people have been affected by it, but the artistic community also has been affected by it. And I guess one of the, if you want to say positive notes, is that it's allowed us to create work like this kind of like hybrid work that started out as a theater piece, and we wanted to make it accessible to everyone. And whether we realize it or not, right now, theater performance is the most inclusive it's ever been in terms of people having access to it. And I think that means a lot. And I hope that this film will be seen by a lot of people, as opposed to just having a week or two run like it would have been, and having it live in that moment. Now it can live beyond that moment.
Thank you, Francisco. Phillip and Tricia.
Hi, yes, Joanna, I love that you mentioned Luis Valdez's poem, Tu eres mi otro yo. I think that is so fitting. It's so appropriate. If I do harm to you, I do harm unto myself. And I think this piece definitely gives opportunity to reflect and to examine and explore different lenses. And that really resonated with me. So thank you so much for giving us that opportunity.
Yeah, ultimately, for me,
being the actor doing it, it was a story of, I have to, from my character's point of view, I have to view it through that lens. So the idea of redemption, and you are never really beyond it. It's never too late to evaluate yourself and what your priorities are and what you value, and it's never too late to make a change. So the idea of redemption is really powerful for me, and I'll take that away from this.
Well, thank you all. Andrew Siañez-De, Francisco Garcia, Phillip, Ray Guevara, Tricia, Castaneda-Guevara, Jhoana Monroy Espinoza, representing the Immigrant Solidarity Project at Adelante Mujeres. It's just been an honor to talk with all of you today and to work with you too. So I just appreciate every single thing that everybody said. We hope that this is a tool that can help people in the future, and definitely we want to thank all the funders, but a special thank you to Oregon Humanities for providing this forum to discuss these issues for the ISM Project. And thanks again to Samson Sierras for recording and editing this talk today. Find out more about watching the ISM films at MediaRites.org. Ofelio and all the prior films will be on our Facebook page and also YouTube channel through July. I'm Dmae Roberts, executive producer of MediaRites. Thanking you all, every single person who is watching and all the people who've been talking. Thank you all for joining us today.